Hello, and welcome to Hobby's AVT department. AVT is the cornerstone of Hobby's ITAD, IT Asset Disposition process. The purpose of this video is to prepare and train you in the many processes of AVT, from testing all the way to data entry. In this video, we will meet John Carter, the AVT supervisor from our Dallas facility. He will run us through the majority of these processes. It is a pleasure to have you with us. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to part one of the Hobby International AVT training video. What we're going to start off with is your basic skid right here, which is how the AVT process starts when we get in a skid from different clients. One thing that I want to make you aware of definitely is that whenever you get a skid, you're going to have your label on here, which is going to identify the skid, and it has the alphanumeric combination right there that lets you know what type of load it is, who the client is that it came from. It also talks about the priority of it, and also just different details that are going to be instrumental into you triaging and doing everything properly. I'll go over that in a little bit in more detail, but first off, we're just going to go ahead and start with the first step, which is taking the plastic off. And one thing you want to make sure that you're aware of when you are taking out the plastic is that you want to triage everything in light components. So we're going to put the PCs together, the monitors, laptops, and then the cords and things like that that we will not inventory, those will go to D-Man. And so we'll set those aside as well. Okay, and so on this pallet we have here, once we took off the plastic, we can see that it's already triaged pretty good. As you can see, it's got the PCs here that are stacked nicely, and it has some laptops back here. But there are a few things like miscellaneous cables and also monitors that we're going to want to separate and put on a different pallet. Now, you might see that some of the monitors will come with the VGA cables plugged in. What you want to do with that is just go ahead and take that out. And with your extra VGA cables, your power cables, any DVI cables or things of that nature, we're going to put those together in a bucket, and we'll sort those for counting later. So next up for this particular pallet, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to separate the laptops. And one thing that we need to remember is that anything that can house memory or that can house customer CPI on it, we want to make sure that those are going to be stuff that we erase. So any desktops, laptops, or any type of network gear where memory is stored, those will have to be erased by our Hobby Shield. Alright, and on this particular pallet we also have the AC adapters, which 9 times out of 10 are going to be used to power on all of the ThinkPads whenever we want to start the wiping process. Now these, when doing the data entry, are able to be put under one barcode in bulk, but we'll do that after we already have everything set up and after we have the laptops wiping. So for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and set this back on the skid. And once we are ready to go ahead and start the wiping process, we'll use those again to power on all of our laptops. Alright, next up we're going to talk about monitor testing. And since on this pallet I did not have a lot of monitors, I'm just going to grab all 3 of them, set the other 2 up here, and set the one that I'm going to be testing on the actual testing station. So when you're going to test the monitor, first thing that you need to do is you need to have your VGA cable as well as your power cable. We're going to plug them in nice and secure. We'll flip it over. Okay, and as you can see, we have the first color is a blank white screen, and that's going to be good because you want to make sure that from the customer standpoint that there's no color pixelation, that there's no blotchiness on the screen, and that the white is showing a true and clear and concise white. As we go through, what you would do is you're going to use the arrow keys on your actual monitor testing station to go through the colors, and when you're wanting to make sure that there's no pixelation or there's no parts of the screen where you're not receiving any color or that we don't have any color blotching. So I'm just going to go through the colors, and we're just going to make sure that the blues are showing true, the greens and things of that nature. And then also, we can do a line thickness test, and this is to make sure that there's no additional lines that are down the center of it or on each side of the screen. So I'm just going through that, going through my colors. So based on that, I would say that this is a good monitor. So what we do is we'll go ahead and put a green sticker on it, notifying that it's good, and we can go ahead and move on to the next one. So this is the second monitor that we're going to test. This is the same process as before. Set it up, and I'm going to plug in my VGA cable and also my power cable. Okay, so as you can see on this particular monitor here, we have a monitor that is cracked from the inside, which is causing the distortion in the colors, the pixelation, and the large black blotches, and just the color blotching overall in general. So this is going to be an automatic failure, and this would be an LCD that's been cracked from the inside. Alright, so we are now in the portion of the video training where we're going to talk about wiping PCs on the Hobby Shield. I have my good friend Corey here who's going to help us out during this demonstration. So the first thing that we need to do is we have to set up the PCs to be wiped with the 4 components, which is going to be the data cable, the power cable, the VGA cable, and then also we need 1 keyboard because we'll use the keyboard to go to each of the 5 machines that we have set up over here. Alright, for this section of the CPU testing, we're going to go ahead and boot up one of the computers, and what we're going to need to do is make sure that we are booting onto the network, which is going to be our Hobby Shield. Now for this particular unit, Corey's pressing the F12 because that's the keystroke to do it, but on different units it can be different, so you need to reference your documentation to let you know what it might be for HP or Lenovo's. And now as you can see on this one, we were doing the F12 keystroke and it went into the Windows repair mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to go and access the BIOS of this particular machine so that we can make sure that the network boot is something that is on and enabled. So now Corey has accessed the BIOS of this particular machine, and so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the menu system and go under security and go to the network boot, and we're going to make sure that this is enabled. So right now the machine is disabled, so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make sure that it's enabled. And now we will have the option during the actual boot process to go ahead and boot directly over the network. So now that we have accessed the BIOS and we have actually turned on the network boot, he's going to do the exact same thing. Corey is going to go ahead and fire up the machine, and now he's pressed the F12, and as you can see, it is booting over the network. And so right now the network, the actual machine is trying to talk to the network, and that's what this is. And once we see loading Shield 64 or 32 based on the machine that you have, then we'll know that we are getting communication and we can go ahead and move to the information screen.